Hey guys, welcome to Methods Week. Last week, we focused on theoretical perspectives, which is to say we focused on big picture ideas about the best and most fruitful ways to look at society and social forces. We looked at conflict theory, which focuses on struggles for power and resources between different social groups, primarily but not fully limited to groups defined by social class. That is, social groups that are identified by their particular position in economies or systems of production and distribution. We also looked at functionalism, which, like conflict theory, focuses on macro level analysis of systems and groups of people. But unlike conflict theory, is primarily interested and focused on the concepts of social order and social solidarity and stability. How does society stay together? The idea of social change under functionalism is a more evolutionary idea rather than the revolutionary idea that it often is in conflict theory, which is looking at the world as a result of struggles and conflicts. We also looked at symbolic interactionism, which is totally unlike conflict theory and functionalism in that it really focuses on the micro level, focuses on minute interactions and the meanings within those interactions of individual people or small groups. Because sociology is a science, these theoretical perspectives are indispensable. In fact, the generation of theories is the primary goal of social science, just as it is the primary goal of natural sciences. This is because it is theories that actually explain our world. Data, however, describes our world, and data are the empirical bases upon which theories must rest if they are to be good theories. Good sociology not only describes the world, but it interprets it. It explains it. And if you get nothing else from this section, my main goal is for you to appreciate just how difficult it is to say something true about the world. That is, I want you to understand just how difficult it is to actually interpret those things that we see, those observations we make about the world. If we want to say something true about the world, there are an incredible number of difficult decisions that have to be made at each step of the research process in order to be able to say that thing with confidence. You will read about many different kinds of research methods this week, each useful for collecting particular kinds of data and less useful for collecting other kinds of data. This is one of the reasons there are so many research methods in sociology and other social sciences. But for the rest of this video, I want to talk to you about a specific part of that process, a part of that process we call operationalization. The length of this word, operationalization, is secondary to the difficulty of the process. The concept of operationalization refers to the process of creating or defining a method of observing and measuring some concept. Sociologists are interested in many, many kinds of concepts that are not easily observed or measured. So in order to say something about those concepts, in order to say something with confidence, they must derive methods to observe and measure those concepts. Let's take a fairly simple concept to see how this works. Let's take the example of poverty. We talk about poverty all the time, and many sociologists are interested in various aspects of poverty. What causes it? What its consequences are? How hard is it to get out of? How people manage their lives within it? The list goes on and on. But what do we mean by poverty? What counts as poverty? This is a kind of question you may hear me pose often. What counts as something? What counts as beautiful? Who counts as white? What counts as happiness or confidence? That is, How do we know when we're looking at this thing we want to know about? Where do we draw the line between what counts and what doesn't count as that thing? And how do we draw that line in a systematic way, which is an absolutely essential part of doing good research? We must be systematic, or our results will be neither valid nor reliable. Now remember from your reading that validity refers to the degree to which some kind or instrument of measurement stands in accurately for the concept being measured. And reliability refers to the degree to which our method or instrument of measurement will consistently yield the same results each time we measure the same thing. So again, take poverty. If we want to compare some aspect of people's lives between those in poverty and those not in poverty, we have to decide what counts as poverty. This is where poverty is sometimes an easy example of operationalization, because our federal and state governments actually identify for us a poverty line. This is the line below which people are in poverty and above which people are not in poverty. But how do they determine that line? Another way to ask that question is, how do they operationalize the concept of poverty? How they calculate it is an example of operationalization. And for decades, the federal government has been calculating the poverty line through using food costs. They calculate about how much it should cost to feed a family of a particular size, and they multiply that number by 3. This is based on the assumption that families spend approximately a third of their income on food. So, is this a valid operationalization of poverty? In part, it might depend on what you want to know about poverty. One critique of this method of operationalizing poverty is that it doesn't actually reveal how many people are significantly struggling in financial ways to meet their basic needs. In part, this is because these days, most families actually spend closer to a fifth of their income on food costs rather than a third of their income. That reflects the rising costs of other basic needs like housing and healthcare. Even so, sociologists frequently use the poverty line as a measurement to tell us what counts, or who counts and who doesn't count as being in poverty. In part, sociologists frequently use this because it provides a universal standard for comparison. Many sociologists use it, which means that we can compare information about poverty from various research studies that use the poverty line, making it a fairly universal standard for comparison. That is, a reliable standard for comparison, even if we may critique its validity. Because poverty is usually measured through income level, which is an inherently comparable and numerical measurement, this is still a fairly simple example. The complexities of the idea of poverty and operationalizing poverty go much further than we've discussed here, but it still remains a numerically based and therefore fairly easily comparable operationalization, or fairly comparable concept. But this idea of operationalizing concepts into observable, measurable, and comparable variables can become even more difficult when these concepts are less easily transformed into numbers. In your assignment for this week, you will be working on operationalizing a number of concepts that are less easily transformed into numerical comparisons and observations. So, good luck with that assignment. Have fun with it, and I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with. Have a great week.